Right, so we're still on the gable end. We're just replacing the parapets now. So parapets, that conjures up some image of some grand castle somewhere, but no, we're on some gable end in Barnoldswick. So what the parapets do is on the gable end of a terrace, not just a terrace, any property really. When you're roofing with blue slate, the wind will blow into the gable, and it has a habit of lifting these top run of slates. So what we do is we compress that top course of slates with stone parapets. So these will be original from the property. It's probably like 1900 maybe, but they have been replaced at some point in the past because there's a cement-based mortar used to fasten them to the wall top. So we've taken off one side. So we'll just show you how we take off the other side now. Oh, actually. So when we're going to come to putting the parapets back on, they'll be off level, so all water shed onto the roof. These are shedding water to the gable, which is creeping into this top course of the pike, and water's ingressing. You can see there's been some issues in the past because someone's put a channel of cement there to channel up the water back onto the roof. That's just a temporary fix really. It's, you're better off taking it off. Do it right, do it once. Do the job right, and it won't have any issues with it. So when we're taking the parapets off, we start at the top and we work our way down. You've got to be really careful when you're taking these parapets off, not to damage this top course of slates. Whoever's repaired them in the past, they've taken the parapets off, but they haven't done any slate repairs. So where they've busted all these slates in, when the water gets down, because it's running that way, where it should be running that way, so it's running down and it's getting into this top course of masonry, water's ingressing. So what we'll do is once these parapets are taken off, we'll do any remedial slate works and put the parapets back on. So we're just using a bolster just to tease the actual flag off that mortar bed. I think it's inevitable you will break some slates in the process of this, but we're going to keep that to a minimum really. Breaking that mortar fillet up, come off. That should lift off. Just like that. That's come off nice and clean. There's no mortar stuck to the bottom, and you see that should be slated right up to the gable. So any moisture that gets in under any of these joints, because this is old mortar, it will be getting down in there and causing some issues. So when we've taken the parapets off, we'll just clean any mortar up from around the base, all around them. See there where that fillet was joining the edge of the parapet onto the slate, so we always get a lip of mortar here, so that gets cleaned off. So that when we put our next fillet on, it's bound and it's stuck to the stone properly, instead of being stuck to old mortar. There's more water can ingress then, and get some more issues. Just clean that up. There's a little lip there where the next parapet we join up to. That's nice and clean, ready to go on again. So when we're taking them off, we'll put them in order as to how they go back on. So the last parapet we take off is the first to go back on. So we'll take these next two off and we'll show you what's on that bottom parapet. Loose, so that'll come off. Clean that up in a while, but we'll just show you what's on this bottom one. So, because it's on a slope, if we were just to bed these parapets on until that mortar goes off, there's a chance that the parapets could slide down the roof. And you don't want that if you've got your fancy new mortar at the bottom. There's some damages. So we'll just tease this up. You see that hole there? So that's functional in the performance of the parapet. Because when we lift this up, see that bit of metal there? So that's a piece of iron that's leaded into that top quoin. So that sticks up through the parapet there. And what they'll do is they'll drill the hole in the back of the parapet, and that ferrous pin sits down and stops the parapets from sliding off the roof. Now you don't, in modern times, you don't use like a ferrous base pin because when you mortar around it, any rust or oxidization happens around the pin will pop your mortar. So that'll give chance for moisture to ingress down into the cavity. So what we normally do when we're replacing parapets is we'll cut that pin off, and we'll drill a new one, and we'll get like a nickel pin or a stainless steel one. That won't rust and there won't be any issues then. So we'll tidy that up. So as you can see from what we've repaired, what we've taken off, all this slating's gonna have to carry on up to the gable. So there's quite a bit of slate work to do here. On the other side, so we've taken these off already, cleaned it all up. It's broken slate, there's bits of remedial stonework to do. And when you get up onto roofs, it's really easy for tradesmen to hide their bad habits, if you will. So when this parapet was put on here, you see how these previous tradesmen have used a roofing baton to bring up the level of the bed that they've put the parapet on. So we'll take that off. That's terrible practice, is that? Should be undrawn and quartered for that. So we'll tidy all this up and we'll come back when we're slating up. Right, so all the slates are where they should be now. So now we can put the parapets back on. So what we've done is we've knocked off that old piece of cast iron. We've re-drilled the hole, and then we've put a nickel screw in there, so the nickel ain't going to corrode. It's not going to cause any issues with smelting the mortar. So we're good to go now. So clean out the hole so that nickel bolt can fit back on there, and then we've just put a decent bed on of mortar. So it's a bit of a fiddly bit. There we are. So that bolt's in the hole, and we were looking for about a 10mm overhang off the slates. About 20mm there, so we push that in. So with this one, just knock that in. So that ain't going anywhere. And then we'll put another one on the up by the ridge, so then when that one's on the ridge we can get the string line up and we know that everything's running in a straight line then. So we'll come back when we've got the string line in and we'll bang some more on. So the bottom flag's on, and then we've fastened the top flag on, and then that's allowed us to get our string line in. So we know now we don't have to measure off it the back of any flags. We know that our spacing is going to be perfect. So as we put the parapets on, that's your level there, so we know that any water that gets on here is going to be shed back onto the roof. So we've got about, about 10 mil of fall, and the same at the top. Yeah, so 10 mil of fall is plenty. Just a little tip for when you're putting your string line on, sometimes it can be really difficult to fasten it onto your actual Harris. So what you can do, tip of the trade is you get like a bit of cement off, an old cement bag, just tear a strip off, fold it in half, and then that sits under your string line there, and you can sit that onto your Harris, weight it down, and you know then that ain't going to move anywhere. Make it a bit easier. So what we've done now is we've measured the length of the next parapet, so that's 1,000. So now I know where to put my bed to. So 1,000's to there. And we need so when I put my next parapet on, I don't want it sat up next to the flag because we don't want stone onto stone. We want to point that up in between. So I'm going to put a spacer there, a pointing trowel, and get it to sit. So we'll do that when we'll put the flag on. So I know now that this flag will fit on there perfectly. And then I can put my spacer in. That's it. Then all I have to do then is get the mallet. Move the parapet out to the string line. I can knock it down to the Harris then. That's on the string line. Get the level on it. Should be fine, should that? Yeah. That'll do nicely. So that's one on. So now all we do then is carry on up to the top stone, and then we can start pointing them up then. So this is the last flag in this section of parapets. The flag would fit in the space. It'd fit up to the next one just fine. That's what I'm trying to say. String line now. So this one's got has it? No, it's still right there. Across. If you just have a look at this underneath here, so we can see now the gable comes up and we've got like the 20mm cover of the slates, and then we've got an extra 10mm cover off the parapets. So we shall return when we're bedding up, when we're pointing up, back pointing even underneath the slates, and we'll get some vents into it, some ventilation. Right, so we're back on the roof. The pointing is on the wall, which means that the parapets are now ready to finish. So what we're doing now is we are putting a fillet of mortar from maybe between 5 and 10mm back from the edge of that arris of the stone parapet down to cover that that wall plate. So what that does, any moisture, any water, sorry, that falls onto the parapet will run off onto the roof, but anything that does come off this edge can get straight onto the wall and down to the ground, so nothing sat around here. But we've also put some vents in, because what these vents do is they are sat just underneath the slates, so the slates run down there, and that allows an air cavity underneath the slates, because underneath this this roof, ooh, it's a bit hot that, there is a bitumen felt layer. Now bitumen isn't breathable, so it will sweat. So if we can get some air moving under there, that will disperse some of that moisture. Not all of it, but it will alleviate some of the issues. So we've got ventilation going under the slates, we've got ventilation going into the wall. So all we have to do now is finish this this fillet, and then the job's complete then. So as regards mix, so we use the 5-to-1 mix on the pointing. 4 Waddington fell, 1 pointing sand, 1 cement. Now on the fillet, because we've got quite a fat fillet, we've got rid of the pointing sand, so we're just using we're using a 4-to-1 mix of Waddington fell sand to cement, because it's quite granular that. So we've got like a strong bonds between in the mortar. There's not going to be any cracks forming. So same as the pointing, we've soaked the underneath the parapet first. You have to put a little bit more water onto the joints when you're pointing them up, because that provides like suction, if you will. So it sticks to the stone better. If we were to put this on dry, all the mortar would fall straight off. So we've got our 4-to-1 mix. There we are. And we've changed trowels for this, so we've got the 3/4 inch trowel. So that allows us to use a wider trowel just to press that mortar into those onto that wall better. So we keep parallel distance from the bottom of the hawk to the bottom of the flags, and then we're just working that a little bit at a time, just working that mortar into that fillet. And it is quite tricky this, to get it to initially stick to the wall. So what we've done is we put like a little chamfer down to the stonework, and then once the mortar's gone off a little bit, later on this afternoon we can come back, we can dress it up, and we can cut the pointing back to a nice clean line then. So we're just quietly away, just building layers of mortar up here, pressing it into that existing back pointing to get good adhesion. And then once it's adhered to the back pointing, we can go over the pointing again and just build up these layers of mortar. Just work them in, make sure it's nicely blended in. And from this angle I can see that I've got like a nice even amount of mortar. So when we look at the fillet, the fillet is not shy of mortar at any point. Keep building them layers up like an onion. Working it in, and you will find as you're working this bottom bit just below that arris, it will pull it away from that edge. So just keep going over it and working that edge back in. So it's a little bit shy there still, so we'll put some more mortar on there. So from that angle we have a nice flat fillet all the way up. So what we can do now is we keep working our way down, and then we'll come back once the mortar's gone off in a good few hours, and we'll show you how we dress it up and the job's complete then. Right, so we're back on the parapets, and this is the final job now. We are fitting a fillet in between the parapets and the wall. So the idea of the fillet is just to tidy up that roof line. So this original roof line that we pointed up to, once we put this fillet on it, it just it merges the parapets into the wall. So even though we've set the parapets off level to shed water back onto the roof, inevitably at some point some waters will be coming off the parapets. So the fillet just blends it in so that there's no moisture or water sat on any of the stone. So everything runs down here, straight down that fillet onto the wall, down to the ground. So this has been on the wall now maybe, I don't know, 2-3 hours. So now we're at that green hard point of the cure of the mortar. So we can work this and shape it and brush it up and dress it up to the finished article, which is, if you have a look on that side, you can just see. So we've got the vents in. So we've got another vent there. These just allow airflow up as we clear the vent out. So they allow airflow under the roof, under the slates even. So we've got a little bit left to do here. So what we'll do is we'll dress up this next section so we can see how we go about it. So we've got a straight edge. I'll just tip that over. So we've got a straight edge, and what we want is a nice, clean, parallel fillet all the way up the roof. So we don't want like a wedge shape. So because it's green hard, we can cut this with the. So that's a pointing trowel, 1.5 inches wide. There's not much use for these apart from they kind of come into their own when you come to putting the fillet in, because you can work a lot of them on. You've got a nice flat edge on the top of that blade. So we just use the pointing trowel just to run a straight line up that mortar fillet. Oh. Like that. So once I've got my straight line there, I can just go back over it with the trowel and cut that mortar right back to the wall. Like so. See how that just came off then? So we've got a nice clean line going all the way up the roof then. Because it's green hard, we can just use the tip of the trowel just to get a flat edge onto the actual mortar. So as I'm scraping it backwards and forwards like that, it's just shaving layers of that mortar off. Which is like why I said that when you're applying it, don't get too precious about getting your the finished appearance of the mortar. Because when it's green hard like this, you've potentially got 24 hours, probably even longer if the weather's a little bit cooler, where you can play around with it and get the finish that you want for the particular project that you've got in mind. Like that. And it's just a case of just scrape it all the way up. You can use, probably could use the edge of the trowel if you want. Yeah, in fact, it's a bit easier, is that, isn't it? So that's a nice flat texture to that mortar there. So all the fat's been taken out of the mortar there. Because if we were to leave this mortar on not scraped or dressed up after we've finished applying it, all the fines in the mortar will come to the surface and we could potentially crack them. So because we're scraping it off, we're back to good mortar that's going to be well bonded to its little atomic pals in the mortar, I guess. I've used Warrington felt sand. It's quite a coarse, granular size to the sand. It's ideal for this because it's going to be nice tight bonds between the mortar. And then once we're done, you just have a look at the bristle brush. So just very gently brush the loose off it. So there we are. That is how we replace and rebed stone parapets.